Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that the war between Kat and Eva sparks anew the moment Kat learns the inheritance Anita left has gone not only to Eva but also to Leslie. That revelation strikes Kat like a blunt force against the fragile stability she has tried to rebuild since the divorce of Nicole and Ted shattered the illusions she once carried. To her, the money is not simply numbers written on a check or digits transferred between accounts, it is a symbol of legacy, recognition, and belonging. It feels like the universe itself has taken what rightfully should have bound her family together and placed it in the hands of people she has long considered usurpers. That resentment grows like a wildfire, its flames licking at every corner of her mind, especially when she recalls the smiling figures of her childhood Nicole and Ted, once the embodiment of a perfect union in her eyes, now reduced to distant memories and broken promises. The bitterness is sharpened by the fact that Nicole, her mother, cannot hide her sorrow when she sees Kat crumbling under the weight of regret. Nicole knows Kat is not mourning just the loss of a relationship with Ted, she is mourning the death of an ideal, the collapse of a sanctuary that gave her identity. Watching her daughter's pain is agony, because Nicole herself is already burdened with the guilt of divorce. Each time Kat's voice trembles or her eyes darken with disappointment, Nicole feels as though the entire separation has been written not just on legal documents but etched into Kat's very soul. The timing could not be worse, for Kat has to prepare for the launch event she is hosting with Chelsea, a night that demands confidence, charm, and vision. Instead, she stands at the edge of emotional ruin. Her thoughts loop endlessly. Why should Eva and Leslie receive the inheritance? Why should they thrive while her family breaks apart? The envy and sorrow twist into a heavy knot inside her chest, one that makes it nearly impossible to focus on her professional commitments. Chelsea notices Kat's unease, urging her to stay composed. But even that feels like pressure Kat resents. The unavoidable collision comes when Kat and Eva find themselves face to face. What begins as a tense silence quickly erupts into sharp words and accusations. Kat hurls the full force of her anger at Eva, blaming her for stealing what little family Kat still had. She points a trembling finger at Eva, declaring that both she and her mother are nothing but opportunists, parasites feeding on what Kat believes belongs to her bloodline. Her words are not measured, they are wounds meant to injure. And in that moment, the mask of civility falls away, leaving behind raw resentment. Eva does not escape unscathed by the exchange. Though she could have retaliated with equal venom, something in her breaks instead. She admits, quietly but firmly, that she feels sorrow over the divorce of Ted and Nicole. Unlike Kat, she had admired their bond from afar, viewing it as a beacon of what love could be. For Eva, seeing that marriage dissolve was like watching a guiding star blink out of existence. She confesses she has always hoped to one day experience a connection of that caliber, a union built on deep respect and lasting affection. Her admission is not strategic, it is vulnerable, almost pleading for Kat to see her sincerity. But Kat cannot accept it. Her perception has already twisted Eva's words into cruelty disguised as kindness. She interprets Eva's confession as mockery, as if Eva is dangling Nicole and Ted's lost happiness like a trophy, showing Kat what she can never reclaim. To Kat, Eva's empathy is an insult, a performance staged to emphasize her own suffering. The confrontation leaves both shaken, but Kat's bitterness only grows heavier, dragging her deeper into resentment. Eva, unsettled, turns toward her father for solace. She visits his home, hoping for warmth, for grounding in the midst of turmoil. Yet instead of comfort, she walks into another battlefield. Leslie is there, her presence filling the room with the sharp scent of arrogance. She flaunts her new wealth as though it were a crown, holding up checks, boasting of the millions Anita's inheritance has poured into her hands. For Leslie, money is not simply currency, it is vindication, proof that she has elevated herself beyond the scorn and dismissal she once endured. But Ted is not a man easily impressed by wealth. When Leslie begins to needle him with reminders of the financial support he once provided her, he stands his ground. He listens, not with admiration but with disgust, as she waves the check like a weapon. Finally, unable to bear her gloating, He slices through the room with his words. He tells her plainly that no amount of money can disguise what she is, no fortune large enough to cleanse the stench of a cheapened character. His voice is sharp, unyielding, filled with a fury that Leslie cannot counter with bills or bank statements. He makes it clear that while Nicole carried herself with grace, dignity, and authenticity, Leslie will never touch that same standard because integrity cannot be bought. The words land like daggers, piercing the inflated ego Leslie has wrapped around herself. She throws the $1 million check back at Ted in a symbolic gesture, as if the act could erase the humiliation. Yet it only makes her appear smaller, pettier, desperate to prove worth through paper and ink. Eva watches silently, caught between shame for her mother's behavior and heartbreak for her father, who must relive the toxic entanglements that dragged him into this fractured web. Ted, however, refuses to linger in the wreckage. He leaves without ceremony, his departure leaving Leslie simmering in rage. The once triumphant display of wealth now feels hollow, the check crumpled in her clenched fist, transformed from a badge of honor into a mocking reminder of her insecurity. The room grows heavy, saturated with tension, as Eva struggles to process what she has just witnessed. She sees her mother's triumph dissolve into humiliation, her father's dignity bruised but intact, and she feels herself pulled in two directions, unable to reconcile the war between them. For Kat, meanwhile, the fallout of this storm reverberates in unexpected ways. Though she was not present in Ted's confrontation with Leslie, the echoes of that bitterness seep into her life. The inheritance dispute becomes more than a financial matter, it becomes the battlefield where loyalty, dignity, and belonging are tested. Each figure, Kat, Eva, Nicole, Ted, and Leslie, stands on shifting ground, their bonds eroded by resentment and pride. The sense of betrayal grows heavier, intertwining with personal failures and long-buried grudges. Kat's inner world becomes a labyrinth of pain and fury. She spends sleepless nights imagining Eva and Leslie enjoying the benefits of Anita's legacy, picturing their smug faces, convinced that they revel in her suffering. Each imagined scene deepens her resentment, convincing her that she is justified in despising them. Her longing for the stability of her childhood, for the image of Nicole and Ted as the perfect pair, turns into obsession. She feels as though if she cannot restore that vision, then at the very least, she must ensure that Eva and Leslie are denied any victory. At the same time, Nicole struggles with her own guilt, trying desperately to hold her daughter together. She recognizes the danger of Kat's obsession, the way it corrodes her focus, her happiness, and her potential. Nicole pleads with her to let go of bitterness, to see that clinging to the past will only destroy what remains of her future. But her words rarely penetrate the fog of Kat's anger. Nicole is forced to watch as her daughter drifts further into despair, consumed by envy and disappointment. The upcoming product launch with Chelsea looms like a mountain. Kat knows that if she fails to deliver, the professional consequences could be severe. Yet she feels trapped between duty and despair. Her personal life is unraveling, her heart poisoned with resentment, and the weight of public expectation presses down harder each day. She finds herself rehearsing smiles in the mirror, practicing speeches with mechanical precision, trying to bury the cracks beneath layers of performance. But beneath the surface, she knows she is breaking. Meanwhile, Eva carries her own burden after witnessing her parents' toxic clash. Though she despises Leslie's arrogance, she cannot abandon her mother completely. Nor can she dismiss the sting of Ted's words, which echo in her mind long after he leaves. She feels torn between loyalty and shame, wishing desperately that she could escape the destructive cycle her family seems trapped in. Yet in moments of solitude, she admits to herself that Ted's assessment of Leslie was not wrong. Money has changed her mother, twisting her into a caricature of success rather than the genuine, flawed woman she once knew. Eva's path and Kat's remain entangled, though every encounter only deepens their hostility. They are mirrors of each other in ways neither want to admit. Women defined by fractured families, both longing for love and belonging, both consumed by wounds that will not heal. And though they stand on opposite sides of the inheritance dispute, their lives are bound by the same gravitational pull of legacy, resentment, and sorrow. The stage is set for conflicts that will not simply fade with time. The bitterness of the past, the arrogance of wealth, and the longing for love collide in a storm that none of them can escape. As the days pass, the lines between personal grievance and family betrayal blur, leaving everyone standing at the threshold of deeper battles yet to come. Kat's bitterness does not subside after the confrontation with Eva. If anything, the resentment festers until it becomes a defining part of her days, influencing every interaction she has and every decision she contemplates. At the launch event with Chelsea, the consequences of her fragile mental state begin to show. On the surface, she manages to hold the poise expected of her. She smiles, greets guests, and speaks with the polish of someone determined not to crack. But underneath, she is haunted by thoughts of Eva and Leslie, who remain symbols of everything that has gone wrong in her life. Each laugh, each cheer from the audience feels like an accusation, a reminder that her personal foundation is unstable even if her professional facade remains intact. Nicole observes from the side, quietly praying her daughter can survive the night without an emotional collapse. She knows how close Kat is to the edge. The polished exterior might fool the guests, but it cannot deceive a mother who recognizes every flicker of her child's eyes, every forced smile. Nicole's heart aches, torn between pride at seeing her daughter hold her ground and fear that once the lights fade, the collapse will be unstoppable. Eva, meanwhile, isolates herself in the aftermath of the disastrous exchange with Kat and the humiliation her mother suffered in front of Ted. She carries the weight of both sides' sure loyalty to Leslie, however fractured, and her admiration for Ted, however unacknowledged. Her days are spent in a haze of conflicting emotions. She revisits her conversation with Kat, replaying every word, wondering if she could have said something differently, something that might have made Kat understand her sincerity. Yet, she knows deep down that Kat's hatred has hardened into something immovable, at least for now. Leslie, though furious at Ted's verbal assault, refuses to let the humiliation dominate her narrative. She tells herself repeatedly that wealth has given her a new identity, one beyond his judgment or Nicole's shadow. She clings to the $1 million check as if it were proof of transformation, ignoring the fact that the moment she flaunted it, it turned into a symbol of her own insecurity. She vows to prove everyone wrong, to cement her status as a woman of power and influence, no matter the cost. That determination, however, begins to twist into reckless ambition, threatening to pull Eva into yet another spiral of consequences she does not deserve. Ted keeps his distance, but his absence is not without significance. The wounds Leslie opened with her arrogance remind him of why the marriage ended, why he could never reconcile her hunger for validation with his need for stability. Yet, the distance also exposes him to loneliness. For years, he relied on the memory of his marriage to Nicole as a pillar. Now, that pillar has crumbled, leaving him standing in ruins that feel both familiar and suffocating. He longs for peace, but each encounter with Leslie reopens scars he thought had closed. For Nicole, the situation grows heavier with each passing week. She has always carried herself with dignity, but even she cannot deny the way her daughter's unhappiness corrodes her spirit. She sees Kat's obsession with the inheritance as dangerous, a flame that could consume her entire future if left unchecked. Nicole worries that Kat's inability to let go of bitterness will not only destroy her relationship with Eva but also sabotage her career, her friendships, and any chance she has at finding happiness beyond family strife. The tension between Kat and Eva escalates further when they meet again at a gathering neither expected to attend. Their eyes lock across the room, and even before words are exchanged, the air crackles with hostility. Kat's voice trembles not with fear but with barely contained rage as she reminds Eva of what she believes was stolen. Eva, exhausted from defending herself against accusations she feels are unjust, snaps back, demanding Kat acknowledge that she, too, is caught in the wreckage of their parents' choices. The argument is less about money now and more about identity. Both women accuse the other of being the reason their families no longer resemble the images they once clung to. Nicole intervenes, trying to calm her daughter, while Ted arrives just in time to pull Eva away from the confrontation. The sight of Nicole and Ted in the same room haunts partners, now separated, only sharpens the pain for both young women. For Kat, it is a cruel reminder of what she has lost. For Eva, it is a vision of what she admired but could never preserve. In private, Nicole confronts Ted about the chaos their fractured family has caused. She tells him that while Leslie may flaunt her inheritance, the true damage lies in the way their children now view themselves. Kat lost in bitterness, Eva trapped between shame and loyalty. Ted agrees, though he struggles to find a solution. His anger at Leslie blinds him, and his guilt about the divorce leaves him unsure of how to approach Kat without reopening wounds. Leslie, however, sees the escalating conflict as an opportunity. If she can keep Kat and Eva at war, she can continue to control the narrative, positioning herself as the wronged woman who rose above judgment. She whispers in Eva's ear, planting seeds of doubt about Kat's intentions, urging her to believe that Kat will never see her as anything but a thief. Eva resists at first, but the poison begins to seep into her thoughts. She starts questioning whether reconciliation with Kat is even possible, or if the hostility is permanent. The rift deepens when news of Leslie's financial venture spreads. She begins investing Anita's inheritance in lavish projects, properties, businesses, all designed to cement her new image of power. Kat hears about it through whispers in the community, and each story feels like salt rubbed into an open wound. She imagines Leslie smiling, Eva by her side, living a life of luxury funded by money that should have preserved Kat's family's legacy. The rage boils over into obsession. Kat begins plotting ways to expose Leslie, to prove that wealth cannot erase the truth of who she really is. Nicole warns her daughter to stop, pleading that revenge will only worsen the pain. But Kat insists she cannot stand by and watch while Leslie and Eva rewrite the story of their lives with money that does not belong to them. Her fixation on justice or vengeance becomes the driving force of her actions. Eva, caught between her mother's ambition and her own longing for peace, feels suffocated. She begins visiting Ted more often, though their conversations are strained. She wants to believe she can still draw strength from him. But every time Leslie's name surfaces, the anger in his voice makes her flinch. She tries to tell him she is not like her mother, that she still carries respect for Nicole and sorrow for the broken marriage, but Ted struggles to separate Eva from Leslie. The burden of being linked to her mother's sins weighs heavily, pushing her closer to despair. The conflict reaches a boiling point when Leslie hosts an extravagant gathering to showcase her new status. Guests arrive dazzled by the displays of wealth, expensive decor, endless champagne, the glitter of a woman determined to prove her worth. Eva stands by her side, uncomfortable but loyal, her unease hidden behind polite smiles. Kat, uninvited, shows up with Chelsea, determined to confront Leslie publicly. Nicole pleads with her not to go, but Kat refuses, claiming that silence would mean surrender. The night explodes in chaos when Kat and Leslie finally clash in front of the assembled guests. Kat calls out her stepmother's arrogance, exposing her as someone who bought prestige but never earned respect. Leslie counters with venom, ridiculing Kat for clinging to the past, accusing her of weakness and jealousy. The room divides, whispers spreading like wildfire, as the raw truth of their hatred plays out for everyone to see. Eva, humiliated by the spectacle, tries to intervene, but Kat turns on her as well, accusing her of standing proudly beside a woman who has poisoned everything good in their lives. Eva's voice cracks as she insists she never wanted this, that she only ever sought acceptance, not rivalry. But Kat refuses to believe her, convinced that Eva is complicit in Leslie's schemes. Ted arrives late, only to witness the wreckage, Nicole trembling with worry, Eva in tears, Kat consumed with rage, and Leslie basking in her own defiance. He sees the family fractured beyond recognition, every bond broken, every word laced with venom. And for the first time, even Ted begins to fear there may be no path back to peace. The night ends with silence heavier than shouting. Kat storms out, Eva retreats to the shadows, Nicole weeps quietly, and Leslie smiles as though she has won. Yet the victory feels hollow, for beneath her bravado lies the undeniable truth: she may have money, but she has no love, no trust, no respect. In the days that follow, the fallout spreads like cracks in glass. Kat becomes more isolated, Consumed by her obsession with exposing Leslie, Eva withdraws, torn between loyalty and shame. Nicole fights to hold her daughter together, even as she feels her own strength waning. Ted remains distant, struggling with the weight of his choices. And Leslie, for all her triumph, finds herself increasingly alone, the echo of her own laughter mocking her when the guests are gone and the lights are dim. What lies ahead is uncertain, but the trajectory is clear. The war within this fractured family has only just begun, and every move from this point forward will determine not only their futures but the legacy they leave behind. The inheritance that once symbolized opportunity has become a curse, binding them to resentment, ambition, and the ghosts of love lost. The aftermath of Leslie's extravagant gathering leaves wounds too deep to ignore. For Kat, the humiliation of watching Eva defend her mother under the glare of public scrutiny only strengthens her conviction that she cannot allow Leslie's influence to dominate their lives. But instead of acting impulsively, she begins to channel her anger into something sharper, a plan that will expose Leslie not through shouting matches or personal vendettas, but through undeniable truth. Chelsea becomes both confidant and cautious ally, warning Kat that the path she is choosing could destroy her reputation if she fails. Yet Kat insists it is the only way forward, the only way to reclaim dignity for herself and her mother. Nicole, weary from endless battles, begs her daughter to let go. She fears Kat is sacrificing her peace of mind for revenge, trading away the possibility of healing for an obsession that can only end in more pain. But Kat cannot hear her. The image of Leslie smiling smugly at that party burns too brightly in her memory. She convinces herself that if she exposes Leslie's corruption, if she reveals how the inheritance has become a weapon of arrogance, the world will see who truly deserves respect. Eva, meanwhile, spirals deeper into despair. She tries to maintain composure in public, but behind closed doors she is fractured. She knows Leslie's ambition is reckless, knows her mother is chasing validation that will never satisfy her, yet she cannot detach herself. Blood ties bind her, even as the weight of Kat's accusations drags her down. She begins visiting Ted more often, seeking refuge, but even there she finds only partial solace. Ted listens, but his bitterness toward Leslie leaks into every word, making Eva feel like an extension of her mother's failures rather than an individual who longs for acceptance. The breaking point arrives when whispers surface about Leslie's investments collapsing. Risky ventures fueled by her hunger for prestige begin to crumble, and the fortune she flaunted starts to dissolve. What was once her greatest weapon becomes her most glaring weakness. Business partners pull away, creditors begin to circle, and the world that seemed so glittering suddenly feels fragile. For Leslie, it is an unthinkable humiliation, the very thing she built her empire to avoid. Kat seizes the moment. She gathers evidence of Leslie's financial recklessness, combining public documents with insider whispers, determined to reveal not only the collapse but the truth that money never defined character. When she presents her findings, it is not in a fit of rage but with calculated precision. Chelsea helps her craft the message, ensuring it is undeniable, leaving Leslie no room to deny the facts. The exposure devastates Leslie's image. The same society that once admired her lavish displays now whispers with scorn. Invitations dry up, allies vanish, and the woman who once stood triumphant finds herself isolated. The humiliation is unbearable. For the first time, Leslie is forced to confront the hollowness of the life she has built, the reality that no check, no party, no investment could ever erase the insecurities she carried from the beginning. Eva watches her mother crumble, torn between pity and exhaustion. She wants to comfort Leslie, but she also knows that her loyalty has dragged her into pain she never deserved. When she finally confronts her mother, her voice is quiet but unshakable. She tells Leslie she can no longer live as an extension of someone else's hunger, that she must carve out her own identity separate from the wreckage. Leslie, broken by the collapse, does not fight back. For the first time, she has no words, no defense, only silence. Nicole and Ted, witnessing the fallout, find themselves pulled into reflection. Their own history, their divorce, and the way it shaped Kat's bitterness and Eva's despair weigh heavily. They realize that while Leslie's arrogance played a role, Their inability to preserve a respectful bond after separation allowed resentment to fester. In private, they share a moment of honesty, acknowledging that though they cannot undo the past, they must do better for their children. The conversation is not a romantic reconciliation but a recognition of shared responsibility, a fragile step toward peace. Kat, having exposed Leslie, does not feel the triumph she expected. Instead, she feels an emptiness, a realization that revenge cannot rebuild what she lost. She sees Eva in the aftermath, stripped of illusions, weary but still standing, and for the first time, she glimpses not a rival but another victim of the chaos their parents created. Their eyes meet, and though no words are spoken, there is a recognition. They are both products of a legacy tainted by pride, resentment, and broken love. Nicole urges Kat to embrace this moment, to let the anger go before it consumes her completely. Kat hesitates, but slowly, she begins to release the bitterness. She recognizes that clinging to the image of her childhood family will only chain her to grief. Eva, too, begins to step into independence, refusing to carry her mother's failures as her own. As the dust settles, the fractured family does not suddenly transform into harmony. Leslie remains isolated, struggling with the ruins of her ambition. Ted and Nicole maintain a careful distance, bound by mutual respect but aware that their paths have permanently diverged. Kat and Eva, though not friends, begin to move from hatred toward an uneasy truce, a space where resentment can no longer define them. The true ending lies not in reconciliation but in survival. Each character stands altered by the war they waged, carrying scars that will not disappear but choosing, in their own way, to step forward. Kat finds strength in her ability to confront darkness without being swallowed by it. Eva discovers resilience in breaking free from her mother's shadow. Nicole embraces the quiet dignity of acceptance, Ted the relief of honesty, and Leslie the bitter truth that wealth cannot buy redemption. The inheritance that once promised power leaves behind only lessons painful, costly, but undeniable. What began as a battle over money becomes a revelation about love, pride, and the danger of letting the past dictate the future. The gates they fought to cross were never about Anita's fortune. They were about identity, belonging, and the courage to step beyond the bitterness that chained them. And as each of them walks away from the wreckage, they carry with them a truth none can escape, that families are not defined by wealth or appearances, but by the choices they make when everything else has been stripped away.